There we go. Hello, welcome to Cunk'd, a very unofficial podcast. I'm your host, Skadoosh, and we are joined today, just incredibly, by Dr. Nigel Spivey. Good afternoon, Doctor. Can I call you Nigel or Dr. Spivey or
Call me Nigel. My students even sometimes call me Nige.
no? Wow, I don't think I'd even be comfortable with that.
No.
Nigel, first of all, thank you again so much for being here. For any listeners of our podcast who might not be familiar with your work, would you mind just kind of giving us a quick kind of overview as to who you are and what you do?
Okay, well, I teach something called classical archaeology, which is the archaeology of the Greeks, the Etruscans, and the Romans.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's my teaching brief. When I was asked to contribute to Conch on Earth, it was to talk about Greek archaeology. And
Mhm.
I don't remember we talked about anything Greek and not really much about archaeology. So
No, I mean, I guess that leads me on perfectly, really, to kind of how you got involved with it, because one of the primary questions that any viewer of Philomena Kunk's work always kind of asks is how much did the experts know, kind of going in ahead of time, and is it a bit of a shock sometimes when she starts to ask the questions?
well, I suppose it is. I only did one half-hour session with her,
Hmm.
and the invitation was, just someone on a phone saying, "Would you like to contribute to a documentary series as a kind of talking head?" And it's
Hmm.
my fault. I didn't do any homework. I didn't pick up who was making this documentary, and as one does, I just said yeah, and it was a very small consideration, I have to say as well. But
Hmm.
I went along with it, and I honestly had no idea that it was a spoof
Oh, fantastic!
to begin with.
Fantastic. I think.
But I presume that's what they wanted. I mean,
Mhm.
some head in the sand academic who never watched TV. I mean, as it happens, I don't even know whether they were aware of this. I have made some, um, uh, well, I'd like to call them serious documentaries
Yes.
in the world of history and archaeology. I know it's a long time ago, but I did.
Uh-huh.
And maybe that was a reason for selection, but it was a trap, and I just stumbled straight into it.
I completely agree with. I think the idea that is their ideal setup, really, isn't it? Because I think the tension of the thing that my colleague, my co-host Nick, and I have talked about at length is, I think some of the magic in the show is based solely on that tension between her and obviously the expert or the academic that she's talking to. And I think quite a few of the experts kind of adopt a very, or they seem to be able to adopt quite a kind of almost benevolent approach with her, as if almost talking to a child. um I would go as far as to say that, Nigel, perhaps that wasn't your perhaps that wasn't the vibe really of your experience
Well,
with Philomena.
yeah, we were talking some while ago now, this recording, and it was in some London studio, and as I said, I hadn't done any research about who was making it or who this Philomena Kunk was, and there was no kind of introduction. So, what's her name, Diane?
Mm.
She was just in a chair, and the cameras were on, and we didn't have any preliminary introduction or any kind of chance to sort of. I mean, obviously, this was all part of the plan.
Hmm.
I had no real idea about what she would ask me. She totally no formal introduction, no hi Nigel. You just sit down in that chair, and it's you could also have been back. You could almost have been in a kind of Gestapo interrogation, because she's totally po-faced.
I
And
mean, it's part of her incredible skill, and we've talked about it a lot. Is being able to keep that face so straight to the point of almost, I think it's a word that I introduced my partner Nick to, which is gormless, a word he wasn't familiar with, and I don't know if that's
Almost, I do know. Yeah, my dad
yeah.
used that
I
word.
don't I don't know if it's particularly accurate, but
Well, no, I'm not sure that would have occurred to me. I mean, at one point in our conversation, interrogation, she got on to. Oh yeah, I think that was a bit of this was broadcast. Some discussion about what went on in the Roman amphitheatre. Okay,
oh,
this is still not Greek archaeology. Okay, I'm already starting to feel a bit queasy about saying things I didn't really know anything about.
uh-huh.
But I was telling her the story about how at one Roman gladiatorial show, elephants were killed,
Mm.
and the elephants started to kind of crumple into the sand. And the more I got into remembering what actually happened or what is supposed to have happened on this occasion, um, she was I don't know well how much she was hamming it up, but she kind of broke into tears. And
Oh wow!
um,
Oh, interesting.
none of this got broadcast. At least it's not, as far as I'm aware. So
That'd be,
she, hats off to her. She's as an actor, she's very good.
she is absolutely there.
And I hadn't realized that she was, you know, basically, I mean, the show sets out to mock academics, doesn't it?
Yes.
Uh,
Well, I think
I thought it was serious up until, about 5 minutes into it.
yeah.
So it's
I,
parody that works very well in that respect, I think.
absolutely, and I think that there's always there comes a point in any conversation where I think obviously the penny is going to drop and drop quite hard. I think when we got to the point of discussing the mental health of lions, that was I think that was a very severe penny drop. That perhaps yes,
You
you,
saw
you would have you would have been forgiven for thinking, oh yeah, okay, so this is not a real person I'm actually speaking to right now.
I mean, I've got one of those brains that works, I hope profoundly, but rather slowly. And
Uh,
I think of smart things to say at about 3 o'clock in the morning, 6 hours. Should have said them. Um,
oh,
but
please
with
don't.
that one, I think you could see my face that,
Well,
well,
there is a moment you do turn, like you actually turn and look behind you, and I wondered if you were looking exactly who you were looking at,
no,
because
that was a question about things that the Romans had
perfected.
given to the world or something like that. So the roads and the bridges, and then it was the anal bleaching. And
I just
you've forgotten that, have you? No.
oh no, I hadn't.
That's
Oh,
I
I
had
have a whole page of
honestly.
questions on
This
a.
is something so totally truthful. I never heard of anal bleaching.
Do you mind me asking? Because it is it's an immortal phrase from the entire show, and big fans of the show, I think, hold it in such high regard. When you said "not around my way," they don't. I guess my next question is, what is your? I mean, are we talking? Is that Cambridge or?
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
talking ivory towers, cloud cuckoo land, whatever you like to call it.
not a lot of anal bleaching.
Well, for all I know, it does go on, but not. It's not something that we talk about at high table.
I didn't think so. I
Uh,
didn't think so. Um, can I ask you about your
and I
relationship?
have not dared to Google it. I mean,
No, well, that's the thing, because I did. There was a part of me that was so tempted to begin this conversation with reading the Oxford Dictionary definition of the term, but I thought, do you know what? Probably it's not, maybe let's start with a more traditional approach, and no visuals certainly in that respect. Um, can I ask you about your relationship to comedy? What did you grow up with in terms of did you? I mean, was comedy a part of your childhood and teenage years, or
God, it'd be a pretty sad childhood if it weren't, wouldn't
wouldn't it? Wouldn't it?
it? Yeah, I mean, in terms of broadcast comedy, you may not believe this, but it is possible on Spotify to get something like 56 hours of The Goon Show. And hugely to my wife's dismay, I do have a lot of Goon Show, and I realize that.
As do I.
Do you?
As do
Right.
I.
Very well.
My father introduced it to me. I'm in my 40s. My dad is in his early 80s,
Yeah.
and I was very blessed that he bought all of the cassette tapes for me.
Yeah.
So I had the Demon Head Shaver of Brighton. I have all of them.
Rolling into water. Yeah, yeah. I mean, my wife just leaves the room when I have it on. She can't stand them, and I think she's not alone.
Oh,
But otherwise, I think the usual. I mean, I had quite a strict puritanical background, and I
mhm.
distinctly remember not being allowed to watch Monty Python.
Uh-huh.
And my father was a pastor, and it was with a sense of juvenile delinquency that I went out to see with one of my sisters, in fact, The Life of Brian.
Oh wow,
It felt like it was such a evil thing to be doing.
a taboo act.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Sneaking out to see Life of Brian.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But you know, if you're
did it in any way? Did Life of Brian inspire you academically? Could you say?
Um, I once went to a party at the French Academy in Rome, dressed as Obelix when I was a big. I used to throw the hammer in my youth, and I was a big hammer thrower.
Oh,
And I carried what's it called, a menhir, one of those things, with Romane ite domum, and done spelt correctly.
yeah, of course. Yeah, I was about to say.
As a homage to that film. But yeah, later on I met Terry Jones, and I've never seen in someone's face so many kind of crevices of constant laughter. It was really impressive moment. Just very brief meeting with him, but I could just tell this man has laughed a lot.
I laughed and laughed.
Yeah, yeah.
I've always found that Terry Jones was a bit of the underrated hero of the troupe. I think going on to watch all the documentaries and stuff years later, and I like yourself, I grew up on Life of Brian and the Holy Grail and such.
Yeah, yeah.
But he was always I think always it was tended to be Cleese and Palin who kind of stood out in that respect from the troupe. But he really, I mean, it's A Life of Brian alone. Terry Jones has some of the most incredible lines. I mean, he will always be. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy.
Well, you know, that film, I mean, there are lines in that film which serious academics, even whether they're aware that they're quoting them, you know, what the Romans done for you know, it gets bandied around a lot in academic circles, I tell you.
I bet
Yeah,
the Judean People's Front.
all that stuff. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this. This has been brilliant, Dr. Spivey. Thank you so much. Uh, are there any other plans for you to appear again on Cunk'd? Would you do it again? I guess is
I think the point is actually having, if you were wised up about it,
yeah.
and this is something you may already have heard from other people. One of my colleagues was also invited to this same recording session, and she did know about it, and she was expecting to be, you know, and as far as I'm aware, they used hardly any of her response. So, in a sense, it has to be a one-off appearance. I think you can't be seen to be. I mean, I think you have to go along with the. You have to be a proper object of mockery.
Yeah.
And if you knew about it, you would just be a smart ass academic who was patronizing her, I think. I mean, looking at it as a parody of, it's not so much a parody of history, is it? It's nor necessarily is it a parody of academic claims to be wise and judicious, although I think it is that as well. But it's a parody manifestly about how these documentaries get made and in such tired cliche sort of tropes of going on a journey. And the people who make these things I can safely say this because I think they've got no use for me anymore. They've all done these courses with, what's his name, Robert McKee. It has to be a 3-act drama.
Yes.
They've all got this terror of the widget, that someone, if they hear a polysyllabic word, they're going to switch off and go and watch Celebrity Love Island instead. So they keep, they're haunted by people losing interest. And so everything has to be sort of, super dramatic and hyped up, and it all gets a bit wearisome. And
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it did put me in mind of one of the clips, which I think she's asking a gentleman about consciousness and where consciousness comes from, and she adds a small addendum to the question at the end. She looks at a sheet of paper and says, "And if you wouldn't mind dumbing it down for our fuck-witted audience."
yeah.
And then obviously, well, she wasn't supposed to read that, but it does kind of chime with exactly like you've just said, that there is this, and it does a really good job. I think that's something that Charlie Brooker himself is very good at, which is kind of the satire, or the puncturing of, as you say, it's not so much the subject itself, it's more about the way the shows like this are made, and what the rules are, so to speak.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Spivey. Nigel.
You transitioned from Nige to Doctor.
I'm just going to go for it now. Can I ask you one small favour?
Try, yeah.
Would you mind, because I'll sign off, but the podcast, as I say, is doing well, and I'm trying to do that professional thing where I gather perhaps small sound bites, if possible, that someone else can actually then do the work on and actually fit into the show.
Right.
Would you mind just saying a sentence for us, something along the lines of, "Hello, this is Dr. Nigel Spivey, and you're listening to Cunk'd, a very unofficial podcast."
Hello, this is Nigel Spivey, and you are listening to Cunk'd. I said that carefully. Cunk'd. Is it an unofficial or an unofficial?
A very unofficial podcast.
Deeply unofficial.
That's perfect. No, Nigel, thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Not at all.
If you wouldn't mind, I mean, we'd love to obviously have a quick chat with you again, maybe later down the line. I think because there are subjects which come up. I know that the one we're doing now is Cunk'd on Earth, but I think we return to the Greeks and the Romans at several points. So if at any point in the future, if we could grab you for 5 minutes again in the future, it would be our honour.
Okay.
Fabulous. Thank you, Nigel.
Cheers, Mike. Bye-bye.